Good evening and welcome to Ramadan Conversations. We're all in this together. Brought to you tonight by the Pearl of the Islands Foundation in New Zealand. I'm John Cleary and I'll be hosting tonight's episode of Ramadan Conversations with our guests from across the ditch. Pearl of the Islands Foundation was established in 2006 by a group of New Zealand Muslims. Their mission, to foster understanding and acceptance between people of diverse communities through meaningful engagement and intercultural events. Alongside community engagement and outreach, PIF does this through a number of intercultural and interfaith dialogue-based events such as Ramadan iftar dinners, and people from all walks of life are able to participate in such events. It's a multi-faith community. And Ramadan Conversations is a 1-hour live Ramadan conversation with guests from all walks of life: parliamentarians, religious leaders, community advocates, and academics. But before I introduce our guests, let me welcome my co-host, Yasir Demirbas. Yasir currently works as an engagement coordinator for the Pearl of the Islands Foundation. He's an aspiring community psychologist and is currently working towards his fourth tertiary qualification, a psychology master's thesis, due to be submitted this year. Yasir was awarded the runner-up of Young Muslim New Zealander of the Year in 2019 for his role in organising a series of Ramadan iftar dinners. He's one of only 3 qualified Turkish interpreters in the country, enjoys playing futsal, and is committed to social justice and climate justice. Yasir, welcome. Good to have you with us.
Kia ora, John. Thanks for having me on, and thank you for hosting tonight's event.
Well, it's wonderful to have you co-hosting. What have you made of Ramadan this year so far? Bit different, really.
Yeah, obviously it's been quite different for everyone around the world. Here in New Zealand, it's no different. A lot of us are at home, I guess. But I guess it's a matter of perspective. We've got a job. I'm still able to work from home. But many around the world have lost family and friends. So I guess in that regard, I'm privileged to be safe and healthy and have a compassionate and caring government that's taking care of us. So yeah, it's very different, but I guess compared to others and what they've gone through and suffered, we're pretty okay, I guess.
Could you tell us a little bit more about the purpose and activities of the Pearl of the Islands Foundation?
Yeah, so PIF is a dialogue-based organisation. So what it aims to do is really bring people together from diverse backgrounds into the same room, into the same venue, and really get people to interact with one another. We call this meaningful interaction. So it's essentially that's what dialogue is. We want people to talk with one another, break down those stereotypes, get to know one another, and really essentially what this leads to is understanding and acceptance of one another. So that's what the aim of PIF is, and we do this through intercultural events and a number of meetings.
Well, hopefully tonight will be a contributor to that noble aim. We've got a great program in store for you tonight. Not only will we be hearing from 4 special guests who have interesting and distinct contributions to make to public discourse, but we have a musical item as well. But now let's introduce our first guest. Paula Tesoriero is a world champion athlete and a former senior public service manager who is currently serving as the Disability Rights Commissioner. A law graduate from Victoria University, Paula has worked in private practice and as a general manager at Statistics New Zealand and the Ministry of Justice. Winning gold in a world record-breaking time at the Beijing Summer Paralympics in 2008 in the women's 500-metre time trial, and 2 bronze medals, her services to cycling were recognised when she was made a member of the New Zealand Order of Merit in 2009. Paula retired as an athlete in 2010. Paula Tesoriero, thanks so much for joining us.
Assalamu alaikum. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for having me.
Alaikum salam.
Paula, a quarter of the New Zealand population has some form of disability. This is a pretty striking fact, and I guess it's similar numbers in Australia. It's something most would almost can't comprehend. What kind of disabilities are most common, and what's your role as an advocate?
Thanks, John. You're right. People are often surprised by that number. And of course, 24% of New Zealand's population is just over 1 million people. So we have a lot of people in New Zealand. And you're right, across the Tasman in Australia, a significant number of disabled people. So you can think of people with disabilities as those with long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairments. And that's what the International Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities sort of frames the definition as. And in New Zealand, the last sort of disability survey that was done was back in 2013, but it is the most recent data that we have. And just to give you a sense of the composition of disabled New Zealanders, people over 65 are more likely to be disabled. In fact, 59% of those who are disabled are over the age of 65. 11% of those who are disabled are children. Māori and Pacific people in New Zealand have higher than average disability rates. For adults, physical limitations are the most common type of impairment. For children, learning difficulty was the most common impairment type. And just over half of all disabled people have more than one type of impairment. So as you can see, it is really varied, and that's as it is around the world. My role as the Disability Rights Commissioner is a statutory function under the Human Rights Act, which is to protect and promote the rights of disabled people. And we use the term disabled people rather than people with disabilities because we subscribe in New Zealand to the social model of disability, which says I'm not disabled by the individual impairment that I have, but rather I'm disabled by the barriers that society puts in place. And so it focuses us all on thinking about our collective role in reducing those barriers.
Excellent.
Yasir.
Thank you, Paula. So what made you consider a career in the Human Rights Commission following years of success as an athlete?
Well, gosh, I love my role. I feel very privileged to serve in this role. And I've always had a passion for disability. I'm disabled myself. I'm an amputee. And growing up as a disabled New Zealander, I experienced my own barriers and my own observations about the world around me. And I was very committed from a young age to think about how I could change attitudes towards disability. And I studied law at university and went off to practice law. And after that, and during my time as an athlete, I really wanted to think about how do I make a meaningful contribution in the area of disability. And when I was performing as an athlete, obviously got to understand my own disability journey a lot more. I met hundreds of people around the world who all opened my eyes to disability even more. And when I retired from being an athlete, I spent the next sort of 10 years or so after I retired being on the boards of sport and disability organisations. And through that experience, it even further opened my eyes to the many barriers and experiences faced by disabled people. So when the role of commissioner came up, for me, it just felt a really obvious fit in terms of being able to bring that lived experience as a disabled person, my love of the law and policy and advocacy, and was just a really nice knitting together of my skills and areas of passion.
Cool, excellent story. So recently, the Labor-led government announced a mammoth $50 billion package as a response to COVID-19. Are you happy with what was allocated towards disability rights, and what are your priorities?
I think, as always with a budget, the devil is in the detail, and how agencies over the next months and years work to allocate those investments, I think will be really telling. I think it's great to see larger investment in disability support services. So here in New Zealand, that's a very specific area of money which goes to things like respite care, supporting independent living. So some very specific areas that goes to. There was a large increase in that, but it was mostly cost pressure related rather than significant actual increase. It was great to see 12 million specifically for disabled people as part of the employment boost. There was some additional money for what we call learning support for education. So that's to maintain support service delivery for a broad range of services. It's a significant investment, and but it's a part of the puzzle of getting to a larger inclusive education system in New Zealand. Some of the other areas of funding that the government have invested in, which is not disability specific, but I think will benefit disabled people, is an increased funding to address family and sexual violence. So while not specifically disability related, there is a real potential to advocate for specific services around that. There's a boost to funding for housing, and again, absolutely an opportunity to be advocating for accessible housing there. And there was also increased funding, in the area of transport and child wellbeing, both of which obviously will be able to benefit disabled people as long as we're advocating for that. I would have liked to have seen some more in mental health funding, although in a way, I'm not surprised there wasn't a more significant increase, given there was a very large increase last year. And I think it's not surprising, but I think this is an area where we would hope to see funding responses as if those needs grow in future years. I would have liked to have seen increases to child and adult disability allowances. But, I think the thing about the budget, any budget really, is when 24% of the population are disabled, then actually the whole budget is relevant. And there are some specific disability initiatives, but it's really about advocating for making sure that disabled people are front and centre in how that money is allocated across the general areas.
Paula, last year you were a guest at a home iftar dinner in Wellington, I understand, organised by the Pearl of the Islands Foundation. What are your impressions, and just how important do you think such multi-faith initiatives are in helping build social cohesion?
John, I think it's really important. I really enjoyed the experience. It was my first such occasion, and I took my then 7-year-old son and Samuel and my husband Peter with me, and so it was their first time as well. And I really enjoyed it because I learned in a more real way than just reading off the internet what Ramadan was about. I learned much more about the Muslim faith. I was able to share the wonderful food that was just incredible, and the hospitality. We took part in some prayers. And I think the more that we understand about each other, then I think it helps us get over what I sometimes think is a fear of othering. And that really happens in the disability space as well. People, there is stigma attached because people see difference as something to be afraid of. And, we really don't need to. So I really enjoyed learning about Ramadan, and I'm really, really looking forward to hopefully next year being able to take part in another iftar dinner. I really enjoyed it, and my family enjoyed it. And for my son to see that, there are other faiths, there are some other beliefs, and that's okay. That's what makes our world diverse. And he enjoyed it. He actually still mentions it a couple of times when we go through the suburb of the family that we had the dinner at. And I think the more we understand each other, then it just helps social cohesion.
Paula Tesoriero, it's been great for you to give us your time. We're sorry it's been so short, but a really meaningful and helpful conversation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Ngā mihi nui and Ramadan Mubarak.
Well, Yasir, our next guest is Dr. Parmjeet Parmar, a member for Parliament from the National Party. She's the National List MP based at Mount Roskill and is the opposition spokesperson for research, science and innovation. And
John, I think we lost your audio. I can't quite hear you at the moment. Or was it my audio?
Yasir, were you able to hear me there?
Okay. Your audio is back.
Yeah.
Welcome back.
Yeah. Did you hear my question?
No, I did not.
I suggested, well, we've got this little hiccup technologically, that
Okay.
I'd like to hear a little bit more about your aspirations in psychology, which is science oriented, and also working in an organisation such as you do. What do you see as your directions professionally?
Yeah. So I guess psychology is one of those fields which has many different categories under it. Like you got political psychology, clinical psychology, community, educational. And obviously, when I entered university, I wasn't fully aware of the choices that I had. So when you say psychologist to someone, the thing that automatically comes to their mind is clinical psychologist. And to be frank, it's very, very difficult to get into a clinical psychology program in New Zealand. They choose a handful of people each year. So me not being a straight A student, I had to really think about my options. And as I continued to study, I got a Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Commerce, and I did my postgrad in science, focusing psychology. Then I took a little bit of a break, and now I write my thesis on values-based practice, and how we can practice our values, what the facilitators are, and what the barriers are. So that's part of the community psychology field, and community psychology pretty much focuses on social issues, social institutions, and pretty much all types of elements that influence individuals, groups, and society as a whole. So you can think of homelessness, you can think of health, you can think of youth, And PIF tries to bring people together from the people of diverse backgrounds with the goal of really advancing understanding and acceptance between people of different backgrounds, as Paula mentioned. Even disability kind of comes into that. So I do think, while I am studying towards my community psychology, master's, completing my master's, I'm also kind of working actively in the field as well. So there's quite a bit of there's a strong correlation between the two, and I'm happy to kind of research the theory, the articles, and read upon the field, and also work practically, apply what I've learned, through my work.
Do you have a dream about the sorts of things you'd like to achieve? If you're working not just in personal psychology, but broadly in social psychology in the field of community, what do you see as a worthwhile aspiration as a psychologist to become? I'm just thinking, are the professional avenues for you? What you would like to say in 10 years' time, what would you like to achieve?
I think I would like a role where I have a greater decision making, where I'm involved and can really contribute more to laws and policies within New Zealand, within Aotearoa. So I'm assuming more of like a policy advisor kind of role within a few years. I think that maybe not a dream, but it's something that's been kind of going through my mind lately. Yeah. Okay, I can't hear you again. Something wrong with the audio.
As an important aspect of community development these days. I mean, particularly when you have a look around the globe at what's been happening to our own sort of democratic political processes. You see this particularly in COVID, this absolute, almost individualist hunger to say, I want to do it my way, as if they're a spoiled 7-year-old. And on the other side is a more communitarian view. And both things have to be analysed psychologically, don't they? I mean, they're social phenomena, but at the root of it, it's the human psyche.
Yeah, and it's fascinating you bring that up, because during this pandemic, we've really seen the approaches by different governments. Some have taken a more economic approach where they put money before people, and other governments, such as New Zealand, have really put people first, and they really emphasize the safety and the well-being and the health of the people before they really open up the country again.
Screen, but we do have our next guest, the Race Relations Commissioner at the Human Rights Commission, Meng Foon. Meng was appointed Race Relations Commissioner in 2019 following 24 years in local community commitment, including those 24 years at the Gisborne District Council, 18 of which he served as mayor. He's one of a handful of people of Chinese descent to have become a mayor in New Zealand, and Meng has also a long-term commitment to sport. He's been chair of the Gisborne Tarawiti Rugby League since 27, and is also a member of the New Zealand Rugby League Board. Such a diverse career. Meng Foon, welcome.
Namaste. Assalamu alaikum. How are you all? G'day. What a great evening today is. It's been very busy today.
It has for
Kia
all
ora,
of us.
Meng.
Thank you
Welcome.
so much for
Kia ora, Yasir. Are you both together?
With us. Yeah, with you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for the invitation, and thank you for the opportunity to chat to your families.
Look, following the dreadful attacks of March the 15th last year, what has been the impact on public perceptions of the Muslim community in New Zealand?
Given the compassion that's come out across right throughout New Zealand, I think the understanding is better. There's still a little way to go, but I'm definitely saying, look, Yehed Gamal, he stood for the local board and he got elected onto the local board in Christchurch. There's definitely more conversations with the government and other office holders in terms of holding to account, lobbying for certain things, able to actually have a conversation openly. And there's still the Royal Commission that's happening and other reports that are coming through through the Ministry of Justice. I just read one the other day. I think the key thing is don't talk about us without us. And that goes with all the races right across New Zealand and all communities right throughout New Zealand. Don't talk about us. Even hear us in Gisborne, they say, well, man, you fellas just come from Wellington. What do you know? You know, you always say, what can we do for you? And definitely they don't have the solutions. And I remember one of my uncles, Uncle Aotearoa Mahuika, he said, look, our issues, our solutions. You just need to support us to actually help us with our solutions. And the locals do have the solutions because they are at the coalface of all of the issues at home. They hear the intel. They've experienced the experiences at home. And look, people generally say, look, you know, even for Maoris or Muslim or Chinese or even Pākehā, we are not homogenous. We are of many diversities, even amongst ourselves. Even for Chinese people, there's 30 odd languages. We come from different cities. We come at different periods in our migration to New Zealand. And the same with Indian people, Muslim people, Maori people. That, you know, people think, oh, all Maoris must be the same. But you go to a different marae, they have a different protocol. You say, oh, I never experienced that one. So never assume that everyone is the same. Everybody is different, but I must say our differences are actually brings us closer together, that we actually have more aspirations that are similar than there are differences. We all want a safe place to live, a roof over our head, family, a job, so education, health. We all want those sort of things. It's just a different way of getting there.
Yeah. Your commitment to intercultural dialogue is quite evident in what you say, but it's also evident at a very practical level. I understand you're fluent in 4 languages, and you also believe that Māori should be compulsory in all schools. Why is language such an important vehicle?
Well, imagine if you can't talk to anybody and you don't understand them, how are you supposed to articulate or even help somebody?
That's at a pretty simple level, but I mean, language itself, I mean, I guess it's the nature of human expression and the richness of it, that you understand somebody else's language.
Yeah.
It's like I feel sorry that I don't understand Maori or I don't understand French. There's got to be a reason for that, and it's not simply a matter of simple communication, is it?
Well, it actually comes down to that simplicity, John. Knowing the language gives you a better insight into the culture. Also, living and being there with people. You know, my role is not just going to meetings and having Zoom calls and having cups of coffee, but is actually to attend functions of celebration, acknowledgements, whatever, and actually learn more and get an in-depth view of where people are, what people are thinking, what are their aspirations, how can we help. It's pretty simple at the end of the day. I think it's sort of like dating. You can do so much on the internet, but sooner or later you got to go and see somebody and press the flesh. And so, you know, I don't underestimate the basics of human life. We tend to complicate things too much. We tend to say, oh, let's go and have a strategic planning day and let's write a report and let's have a review, and all these things are sitting on the shelf. All people wanted for, say, like this COVID was more information in different languages. Where do we get our PEP? You know, just simple things. Just where do we get our food? I'll give you the most simplest thing, and that's Madislow's law in terms of what happened in Christchurch in terms of the earthquake there. When Christchurch suffered the earthquake, all people wanted was, where am I going to get my drinking water and where am I going to go to the toilet? It didn't worry about the stadiums, the library, the theatres. or the shops. It was just a core basic needs. And that's what we need to come down to, because we tend to complicate life too much. And it's really about face to face, being kind, being respectful, wanting to learn, and also sharing as well is very important.
Yeah, that's you.
Thanks, Meng. Say no to racism.
Oh, was that my time? Oh,
no,
sorry. I thought we finished.
No.
That was quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next question.
Yeah,
Say
Yasir.
no to racism. Say no to racism has been a popular campaign in New Zealand. Do you think it's been effective in reducing reported levels of discrimination?
It's been effective to a point that actually people are aware that, when Taika came on TV and in the ad campaigns of the Give Nothing to Racism #1, people said, oh, well, what's he talking about, And it takes a little while to comprehend these sort of things. And, I'm quite impressed with, say, like the Teachers' Council. They've actually taken on board that they are going to unteach racism in the schools now. That came out of the Give Nothing to Racism campaign. I have a look at, I've had a meeting with Jeannie at Z Energy. Now, she says about 60 to 70% of her staff are actually Middle Eastern Asian people, and being kind is very important. And so they have a simple message: look, when you rock up at 2:00 in the morning, bit intoxicated, just be aware that you need to be kind to get your petrol. So it's very important that we continue with these messages, and it's great that the Prime Minister, kindness, respect, and give nothing to racism. She wrote to the New Zealand Chinese Association just a couple of days ago and says, look, she's aware and they are doing lots more in terms of resources and messaging. And it's very important for leaders in our country to actually have the correct messaging in terms of what is the type of New Zealand that we want. Is it a one that you can have freedom of speech without responsibility and go rah, rah, rah and insult everybody? Or is it that you want to be kind and be respectful to people? And that's the type of New Zealand that I want. I've had meetings with Google, Facebook, and .nz. And my question to them, they said, look, what can we do? And I said, well, what is the type of New Zealand that you want? And right now, we're going through conversations about the New Zealand Constitution. What is the New Zealand Constitution? What is a constitution? Well, it's about our values. What are our values going into the future? What are the rocks that we don't want to give up? Māori don't talk about manaakitanga, kaitiekitanga, aroha, all those values. We all have similar values to each other. And then I've just heard in your previous conversation, is it the money or is it about the people? And it's very important that we actually put people first. And we've always said, he tāngata, he tāngata, he tāngata. Always people first, because without people, who are we? And, we all come to this beautiful country. We all hear about how beautiful this country is, and it is a beautiful country, but we do have some systemic issues in all levels of society. And we just need to continue to work on those plans. One of my biggest things is actually, when I came into the job, one of my friends, Andrew Beecroft, says, look, Meng, whatever you do, try and move some rocks. And I thought about it and I said, yeah, you're right, because otherwise you can sift a lot of sand and get nothing. So my key rock is actually lobbying the Ministry of Education and the government, the schools, to actually have anti-bullying, take out anti-campaign systems in our school. And Kiva is one of those programs, and there's a number of other ones.
That's right.
Jade Speak is another one, and they're very good. And I'm going to say that what we want is a safe environment for our children's school. Not only the physical safeness of the OSH playground, but the psychological safe. What we say is very important to our children, and they are the future. If we can convince, the majority of them to be kind, to be safe, they will actually take that to the next level, back into the universities, into the workplace, and it'll change our society as years go on. And it wasn't that long ago. People were, the Negroes had it hard, the Chinese had it hard, the Indian people had it hard, the Irish, the Scottish, everybody had it hard a long time ago. But we're starting to move on, and we're starting to say, hey, we are all human beings, and we all have human rights, and we all need to be kind and respectful to each other. In New Zealand, we have I think there's around about 20,000 marriages each year. Unfortunately, obviously not the same 20,000 that got married this year, but there are 7,000 separations. And so nearly 1.3 million of our community are faced with some crime, which is upsetting. And half of that is actually assault, and more worse is actually sexual assault on partners and partners, which a lot actually aren't reported. And that's just come out with the Ministry of Justice report. And so, we've got a lot of work to do in family violence, and all those ills that we have. But I live in hope, and I hope that we all live in hope that we can actually make a difference. And I'm here to serve our community every moment of the day. That's why I'm here at 9 o'clock or 9:30 in the evening. I've had another few interviews regarding the legislating. The Prime Minister came out with, said, look, I'm looking at having some more holidays to help the COVID out. And I'm foot forward, and I want to actually ask the Prime Minister if she would legislate having the New Zealand wars as in legislation, because as soon as they signed the treaty, they were starting to Maoris and their land. That happened for about 20 years, and then it was the South of the Pen after. And so we need to actually learn our history, warts and all, and the good that came out of it. And then we, as our children study those sort of things, they would be able to move forward for better nationhood and better kind country, like we have been demonstrating. During March 15, we demonstrated that we can be kind and tolerant, respectful in this COVID situation. And I'm just saying, we do live in a great country with great hope. And I and a number of people like yourselves are wanting to actually improve our lot as we go forward.
In Australia, over the last recent time with COVID, we've noticed an increase in racial incidents directed at certain communities, particularly the Chinese. Have you noticed anything similar in New Zealand? And you speak of unconscious bias. Have you indicated here?
Yeah, sure. So we had a spike pre-COVID. So anyone that was Chinese sort of got the cold shoulder. Some of them said, you got the Chinese virus.
Okay, that's good.
And as time went on, when we came under lockdown, NetSafe has identified that there's been about a 3 or 4-fold increase in cyber bullying and racism matters on NetSafe. The police have also indicated that 80% of their lockdown complaints are to do with race. The Human Rights Commission is receiving spikes of racism. Even though the numbers are not like thousands, it's a few hundred, it's still upsetting to those that are receiving it, and to those who have been trying very hard to actually not to convey the message that we should continue to be kind. We do not exercise rudeness and unkindness and being mean to people. And so it's very important that we continue with this messaging. And if I could do any more, I would.
You've got a long-term interest in sport. It's one of those areas where in a positive way. It can bring down racial and cultural barriers, but it also has a strong internal culture where discrimination can exist and indeed in the past has existed. Is this one of those areas of unconscious bias?
Oh, look, I must say, as time goes on, it's getting better. It used to be, a lot of bullying used to happen. Probably a lot of unconscious bias. Nowadays you've got women on the rugby league, rugby union, being referees, being on the board, being managers. It's great to see the breaking down of all those barriers. And you've got sports really should be at the top level. It's and it's great that there is ability. I mean, it wasn't that long. There was apartheid, and it was halt all racial tours from South Africa. And so they've turned their country around and making sure that the law said that there should be so many black people actually in the rugby team. Mate, they're still good players. And same for us. I mean, we make sure that we pick the best players, whether they, whatever nationality they are, cricket teams, the best. And so there's definitely been a breakdown in the rules and the ethics. I applaud the sporting families to ensure that there is no racism in there. We just had the other time a cricket player from England, and he was called such and such, and that person got caught, and he was banned from watching cricket for going to the cricket grounds for so long. So long as we hold strong to those values and we issue the correct message and the punishment to those people, that sends a warning. I mean, it wasn't that long that was hooliganism in English football. You don't hear about that now because they make sure that they're going to take away the thing that you really love, and that's going to the grounds to watch it. And so there's a lot of work that's been happening, good work that's been happening in Sport New Zealand, in all aspects of sport. And so I'm just saying, yes, sport is a key aspect of breaking down cultures and getting people to understand each other. Because you're nearly living with them 24/7 when you're playing professional sports too.
Yes, Yasir, perhaps we're now approaching our time limit on our conversation here. Perhaps you could ask one last question for Meng Foon for us.
Sure. What are some simple steps we can take to stand up against racism, sexism, discrimination of all forms, Meng?
Yeah, so we've got three simple things that you can do. Okay, if you're witnessing any discrimination at all, or whatever, the main thing is that you got to stand up and get a few mates alongside and say, stop it. You got to stand up, be an upstander and say, this is not on, stop it. The next thing, that if you can't stop it, you make sure that you write down or record as much of the information as possible so that you can be a witness and ring up the police as soon as possible so that you can actually report this hideous crime to them. Now, if you are a victim, you need to actually say stop it, and if they don't stop it, you need to actually, when it finishes, you need to actually record as much as possible, date, time, what they said, the clothes that they wore, the height, the colour of the skin, all that sort of stuff. You need to record it, and then you're going to report it to the correct authorities, and generally the police. The problem with when people report things and they don't write it down, they start to get nervous because the police will ask you, what time was it? And you'll say 9:30. And they'll say, are you sure it's 9:30? Oh, no, I think it might have been 10 o'clock. And once you start wavering with your evidence, it actually makes it very difficult for the police to investigate. And so you need to actually write things down, go to the police station with your mate. So the thing is to be an upstander, record and report. And that's just some simple basic tools for all of us. Everybody's got a smartphone nowadays, and it's very important that, you know, having the right tools and doing it right there and then is the correct strategy. And that's been advised by the police as well. Whatever crime it is, whether it's discrimination or a burglary or anything, you got to do those 3 steps.
Meng Foon, it's been great to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us today.
No, thank you, John, and thank you, Yasir. Thank you to the Pearls of the Pacific. I think they got hold of me.
Pearl of the Islands,
and, yeah. And so,
thank you so much.
yeah, all the best with all the other speakers, and all the best for Ramadan. I used to think that, man, these people are tough, eh? They don't eat for 30 days. And then I found out about 5 years ago they eat at night. Top people you
Happy
are.
to join them.
Ka pai you. Okay.
Now, I'm told, Yasir, we have a little musical interlude before our final guest is introduced, Dr. Chris Galloway. But first, a little music. Oh, wonderful there. A little refreshing New Zealand culture for all those Aussies listening who really want to see how it's done. Now, a little while ago, much earlier in the program, I proposed introducing to you Dr. Parmjeet Palmer, List MP for the National Party. Our final guest, Chris Galloway, has now got a little problem, and we've been able to recover. Parmjeet has made it to our microphone, and so it's a great pleasure to welcome Parmjeet Palmer, Member of Parliament from the National Party. She's a former National List MP based in Mount Roskill and is the opposition spokesperson for research, science and innovation and associate spokesperson for economic development. Dr. Palmer became the first Indian-born woman to be a Member of Parliament in New Zealand in the 2014 general election. Prior to entering Parliament, she worked as a scientist, businesswoman, broadcaster, and community advocate. And on the personal front, she's the proud mother of 2 sons, lives in Auckland with her husband Ravinda, and her 2 sons, Jagmeet and Parmjeet, are very close to their very handsome dog Goldberg, I'm told. Parmjeet, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Yasir, for this opportunity. And I am a current list member of Parliament based in Mount Roskill, not former. So, yeah, it's a pleasure and to be in your show, and it's a real honor and privilege to be a member of Parliament.
Welcome, Parmjeet.
New Zealand was one of the first countries to enter lockdown. It's proved successful, but how is the situation now, just briefly?
Actually, I would say it is quite positive. Now, 4 days in a row, we have seen 0 positives, which is really, I would say, the health response rate. So, yeah, level down, it was quite difficult. I would say it was unusual and also tough for people. Unusual in terms of restrictions people had on their lifestyle, and tough for people, those who couldn't operate their businesses and had to sacrifice their living. So it was both unusual and tough for people, but I'm really grateful to each and every one here applying to level 4. And because of that, we came down to level 3, and now we are in level 2. And obviously, people to get down to level 1. So level 2 is very, I would say, compared to level 4, relaxed, but still there are some restrictions around services like hospitality, and obviously social distancing is become part of our life now. And it will, in my view, continue until we have a vaccine. We go into level 1, depending on when we open. So some sectors are still suffering and calling for more relaxation, but overall the health response has been great. But now the focus on our economy and supporting our businesses, making sure that people are able to find jobs and are able to run their lives as usual.
Yasir.
Dr. Palmer, as you're well aware, Pearl of the Islands Foundation organises and hosts people from diverse backgrounds every year with their Ramadan iftar dinners. You've attended some of these institutional iftar dinners and also been a guest at home iftar dinners. How do you think these iftars contribute to society?
They are great events. And for me, as you would know, I'm originally from India. So for me, Muslim faith is not a new thing. I'm quite used to it. I grew up with some Muslim friends there in India. And coming to New Zealand, my view is that we take great pride in being a very, very multicultural country. And in Auckland, and where I'm based as a member of parliament in Mount Roskill is one of the most diverse electorate in the whole country. And if we just look at Auckland, the city we can claim that Auckland is one of the most culturally diverse city in the whole world. So, people like me, those who look, like an immigrant, we don't, and other people that are new in New Zealand, they don't feel like a foreigner when we're walking around. So we're quite used to seeing, people coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, different faiths. And here, a Pearl of the Island Foundation is doing a great job of inviting the community and extending their festivals to the wider community, giving the wider community the opportunity to enjoy these festivities. And obviously this time Ramadan has been, I will not say it was difficult, I'll say it's different in the sense that, festivals for me is an opportunity to go out and connect with families and friends. So this time that opportunity wasn't there. But that main significance of Ramadan, the spiritual, religious value, the faith was definitely there. And I really hope that families took that opportunity to celebrate this month as they would usually do. But obviously, if we miss those dinners, we know iftar dinners are hosted by various mosques, various community organizations in different community halls. And yes, you will remember last year we had a lovely dinner get together, and I've missed those kind of get-togethers because there is a lot of personal touch in there, the opportunity for people to understand each other. And for me, I am not a Muslim. But my understanding is that people of Muslim faith, for them, offering iftar to somebody who is fasting is considered to be something that is rewarding. So, because I don't fast, but still I get the invitations from you all. So, in my view, it's not just about that, it's about the wider community. And that's how it should be in such a multicultural community, that we go out, reach out to other members in the community and showcase our culture. And that's what you do. And I really want to congratulate you for the great work that you do in that space.
Dr. Palmer, you have a strong background in science and community advocacy. What's your view of the way in which the government's recent COVID-19 package has been designed? I mean, what priorities would you wish to be emphasised, and how is it most beneficial?
So in New Zealand, we are a small country, but a very important country, and that punches above its weight. So it's really important as a scientist that I feel that we support our scientists here in New Zealand. We should show our trust in our scientists by supporting them, giving them all the opportunity to contribute to the global effort. And I was quite disappointed to see that when there was a call made to New Zealand for a global effort, New Zealand didn't take part, but Australia did. And then our local scientists have been also calling our government to support them to do some research to develop a vaccine for COVID-19. And our government, they have started up a fund, but that came at the cost of another research and development fund, which I'm not happy about, because for any research that goes towards COVID, it's really important for us to make sure that that is a new money. And for scientists, they don't always follow money, but they all follow opportunities. And so in the long run, I want to make sure that those opportunities for our scientists are available here. We don't want to lose these, great scientists, these great expertise to other economies. And so this is the opportunity for our government to show that they really believe in our scientists by giving them that $10 million that our scientists have been asking for. And the argument that, some vaccine development work has already been to animal trial stage and now going to human trial stage, that's fine. But when you are doing research and development, it has to go through, especially when you're developing a vaccine, has to go through all those stages, all those phases. It's a very complex process successfully before it can be considered a complete success that can be used for an intervention. But at this stage, it's all research and development. So why not give our New Zealand scientists the opportunity to be part of that global effort? And that's what I'm advocating for.
Yasir.
Whilst there will be some sad stories in the community, how would you encourage people to remain positive during this period?
Yes, sir, this has been a very busy time for me. Your Parliament wasn't sitting. Some select committees were on. I chair the Education and Workforce Select Committee. But other than that, I was fielding so many inquiries from people in so many different kind of circumstances. So I've seen what was going on in the community, and the kind of problems that my office was dealing with are not kind of usual problems, because people normally for those kind of problems will not reach out to their member of parliament. But these were unusual times, and that's why these problems became unusual problems and people needed help. So I was really busy helping people, like, for example, an individual whose mother passed away. She really wanted to be at her mother's funeral, but during lockdown level 4, that wasn't allowed. But finally, we managed to get the permission, and she attended her mother's funeral. I spent 1.5 days working on that case. And then, when we were calling around, we found some disabled people in Mount Roskill electorate, and their groceries were getting low, so we had to organize some shopping for them. So list goes on. So yes, it was quite difficult, but now I'm hoping that coming out from level 3 now into level 2 and looking forward to getting into level 1, it will become easier for people. And during this lockdown and COVID-19, I think what we have learned is to look after each other. We have learned, some simple practice of hygiene, keep infectious disease away, and mainly how we care for each other, how we reach out to others to see if they need any help. And I really hope that that continues into the future. And overall, New Zealand, we Kiwis here, are quite a positive people. And so we have done really well, and I'm really positive about us, going forward like that with our positivity.
Dr. Parmjeet Parmar, it's been great of you to join us this evening. Thank you for doing so, and thank you for putting up with the little sort of technical difficulties we had there, but it's been wonderful to have you with us.
Thank you so much, John, and thank you so much, Yasir. Yes, of course, technology is great, but technical difficulties are part of using technology. So we are quite used to that. And I want to wish you all a very happy Ramadan, and we look forward to Eid. Thank you.
Well, yes, yeah, that just about wraps up the program for tonight. Thank you for joining us on this rather adventurous crossing of the ditch.
Thanks, John, for hosting this event. It's a shame we couldn't have Dr. Galloway join us, but
Yes,
Parmjeet joined us in the last minute, so I guess that helped us quite a bit, didn't it?
it did indeed. And you helped us quite a bit as well by giving us a little sort of future autobiography of Yasir Demirbas. So thank
Yeah,
you
well,
so much for
I
that.
wasn't expecting it, but I wasn't prepared. But it did come out well, so
It
I'm
came
glad the
out well.
audience enjoyed that.
And thank you to our audience, wherever you may be, for watching this episode of Ramadan Conversations. The next episode of Ramadan Conversations is scheduled for tomorrow. And as for this episode, it will be uploaded to the Pearl of the Islands YouTube channel quite soon. Should you wish to catch up on previous Ramadan Conversations or view this one again, you can find them all on the Affinity YouTube channel. Stay safe. Have a blessed Ramadan.